Good evening and welcome to Legal Tech Live. We are here, episode 101, 101. We took a little bit of a hiatus, and our guest tonight is Jason Moyse. Jason Moyse is the director at Autologyx, and we'll be discussing Autologyx tonight. He's also the principal at LawMade, keynote speaker, writer, technologist, lawyer, consultant. There's nothing that he doesn't do. Jason, welcome to the show. Thanks for joining. I told you a while back that you would be on for 101, and then I took kind of a long hiatus and enjoyed myself. But thanks for being here. Glad you're here.
Thanks, Nick, and thanks for having me. It's a pleasure, and I think your hiatus is probably well deserved. And I think a lot of folks looking in are pleased that you are back. I know a lot of folks look in on this with interest. So good on you.
Well, thank you. And did we meet? Did we miss anything in your introduction? You've had quite the history and experience in the legal sector, and now you're with Autologyx. Is there anything that we need to cover that we didn't cover?
I should think not. That's certainly a lot of stuff. The one thing I would say is been on the scene for a while, that's for sure. The things that used to set me apart increasingly don't set me apart because more and more folks are starting to have a background like my own, which was I practiced as a lawyer for almost 10 years, 5 years in private practice and 5 years in-house. And I think people in the know those are two solitudes. Those are two different things. And that's the perspective I've brought. So that practice, and then I'm as much I'm a business person first, probably, and a lawyer far down the list. But I definitely like the legal services industry.
Yeah, we have a little bit of background there, although I skipped the practice and went more into directly into the technology and business side, and it just I think probably uh, certain aspects of family background were that that business did always come first besides the
Yeah,
trade. So
yeah.
tell us a little bit. You had done. I had learned about you a few years back, probably during the LawMade days, or when you were more focused on LawMade and quite active on Twitter, and made me laugh a few times, which is always a great entry to interacting with somebody for me. But tell us about Autologyx and now your role there as a director.
Sure, and I'm thrilled to be part of Autologyx, and I've been in the company coming up for a year. I came in with a colleague of mine. For I was boots on ground in North America for Elevate Services for a number of years, and one of my colleagues who I didn't necessarily work with directly but got to know very well is Ed Wilson, who's currently the CEO of Autologyx. But he came into the company about 2 years ago after exiting Elevate. He consulted for a while with the company and then moved into the CEO role. Ben Stoneham is actually the founder of the company. He's a technical founder and does a pure CTO role. So we owe it to Ben, who started this company actually a number of years ago, but serving another business vertical at that time. The business started out in sort of the recruitment onboarding space. Autologyx, by the way, it's a workflow automation platform, and it's a very powerful one. And with Ed and I coming into the business with our background, as well as we have another colleague, our colleague Aki, who was at Interlinks many years ago and did a tour at Elevate as well. He's coming in a marketing capacity as well. And we have our sights set on legal as a vertical, but I would servicing both in-house corporate legal departments, as well as I would say those forward-thinking law firms that are truly on the path to digital transformation. And we've got our key client in the market as a capstone that we reference, although we've got a growing roster of client wins, is Eversheds, who has an offering in the market called Connexo. And we're very much a part of their Connexo offering from a technological standpoint in support of managed services.
So, what are the primary? So Autologyx wasn't always focused on legal. It was legal is one vertical that you and a few of the others have sort of honed in on. Correct?
Yep, that's correct.
So, what? Tell us about the workflow, kind of the solution that you guys offer. For those who are watching live in the Facebook group now or recorded, I've posted sort of their sizzle reel YouTube video that I was rocking out to before we started the conversation tonight. So go check that out. It does give you kind of some overview. Looks like a really clean setup in the video as to how your workflow automation tool works, but or tools. I guess it's probably a set of tools is probably a better way to say that. But tell us
Well,
a bit about it.
yeah, and so we actually look at it as a platform,
Okay.
and there's like many things that are coming into legal, it's very much an amalgam of what's happening in technology and corporate land writ large, only now being applied to the legal vertical. So we are on a couple of different waves that are happening in the broader commercial world, but also legal. One is we are a low code solution premised on use cases built off of data models. So we use a drag and drop sequencer that puts together component parts where you can have, you build out a data model, you build out the connectivity to other parts of the existing tech stack, whether that's via API call or web scrape or what have you. We pretty much act as a fabric and can connect to any existing tech stack. So you build sort of on the front end. Either our more sophisticated clients do that on their own, or they might leverage professional services to do that. But at the end of the day, we are what is known as human in the loop automation. The end
Okay.
users are usually doing some form of interaction via a web portal that might be a work queue, a task list, a legal request dashboard, but it's all driven off of the data elements that are sort of orchestrated on the front end. The thing that separates us from a lot of other legal tech that we see out there, again, trends happening in the broader round. We're not a point solution, and we're not a single purpose solution either. We are a platform that does all kinds of use cases off a singular platform. Part of the drum I've been beating, I know I've watched your show, and we have a lot of great folks coming in, but I can tell you from the client perspective, especially the corporate department, they're not in a position to continue to buy, even though we're evangelists and we love to see this
We
explosion of legal tech. People can't
absolutely.
people can't possibly understand what it all is or how it all fits or even what it all does. And our counsel is to stop buying point solutions in particular and think in terms of platform. And because we're a platform, we hook right into whether it's iManage, whether it's SharePoint, HiQ, other existing parts of the tech stack, so you can have a full end-to-end workflow, whether that's lease review or what have you.
This has gone. So I've interviewed tons of small startups, as you know, lots of them with oftentimes kind of standalone tools or solutions. And the kind of overarching thing when at the end of last year, when middle of last year and end of last year, I started interviewing more people at larger legal operations and law firms. And the trend that I'm noticing, a for being a financially sustainable legal tech organization,
Yeah.
really have to aim for the larger operations uh, who have the funds rather than the solo and small practice. These are trends that I've seen,
Yep.
and then it just has to be built into the workflow of whoever the end user is. So if they're so build it for Microsoft Word, Microsoft Outlook. You mentioned iManage. You mentioned the whole tech stack that they're already using. So you came into it, you probably were ahead of me because you've been in the space probably a little longer than I have. You probably saw some of these trends before I saw them.
Perhaps yeah, I saw them, but they're way more pronounced than they've ever been before. Now it was a whisper, originally maybe a whisper, and now it's a roar. I would say there is a place for everybody, but from a client perspective, small or large client, increasingly they think of their innovation agenda, it's an ecosystem, or at minimum it's a supply chain. And so there is a place for point solutions if you do something
Sure.
that no one else does and fit into a broader workflow. Well, that's great. And we have lots of instances of that where something is hooked in as part of a broader supply chain to deliver an end-to-end solution. Again, typically you might see things like lease review or entity management, or insurance renewals, even case management, and nuanced case management for specific areas that the in market case management platforms don't meet. Some folks want to have their own nuances, and it's just you get a bit more customization when you're
More customization, right?
off a
Right.
platform.
But it does seem like when I was looking at what Autologyx offers in that kind of end-to-end solution, as you mentioned, this is for scale. This is built for scale, it seems, and built for the larger enterprise operation.
Yeah, yeah, I would tend to agree mostly. Or there is a place for it's definitely built for scale, that I would agree with. But larger enterprise, that's there are a lot of niche boutiques that do volume work, and so
Mhm.
that's where we really shine. Is where there is a huge volume of data and data sources that need to be connected, or huge volumes of whatever, volumes of claims, volumes of matters that need to be processed. That's where we really shine, particularly where big volumes, lots of moving parts, but no way to see the end to end. And that's where we add a lot of clarity to what is otherwise, my technical term. Often I say we shine wherever there's a hot mess, right?
Okay. Okay. Which is
uh,
good because that's a I mean, we always talk problem solution, right?
yeah.
Those terminology, but a hot mess is a problem that needs to be solved.
Yeah. If you're processing everything in Excel spreadsheets and email, and it's a big process, and you're having trouble and you've got some other data sources that need to be involved, like a system of record, whether that's a database or anything else. um, rather than MacGyvering it internally, we produce things that are a lot more elegant than that. And the wins for folks, like a lot of technology plays, the wins might be speed or turnaround time, et cetera, savings that way, but it's also transparency. When you're finally able to see what left hand and right hand are doing at any point in time, it helps you control your business a lot better. We have a lot of examples of that.
That's great. Can you give us some of those examples where Autologics has been helpful in that transparency?
Yeah, I mean, the one I often point to, and we've got more and more coming all the time, but I often highlight as an example. There's a U.S. telco. Um, we all know cell towers. They have 140,000 cell towers. Each of those, you might not know, are on leased land. They're each on a little plot of land, and there's a lease associated with each one of those. So the telco would need to negotiate on an annualized basis about 40,000 leases a year, 1,400 people in the field doing negotiations, abstracts of those leases going to a review team composed of junior and senior paraprofessionals and lawyers, and having to get those signed off. So that type of process, that's a lot of moving parts, even with an existing database. If you're processing all that through email, et cetera, they weren't meeting their service level agreements to their internal business users. Autologyx came into the fore on that one because it's a digital operations platform, taking in information, turning it into data, able to use things like fillable forms, triaging work by way of automation to next on bench, right? By
Mm-hmm.
way of capacity, in some cases, expertise, tied into the existing system of record, tied into DocuSign, even tied into machine learning. We're not a machine learning platform, but because we hook into machine learning applications, in that case, they're able to ingest all those leases. So that's an example where we came in, the individual reviewers, fillable forms, using work queues to process their work. You can now see at any point in time where a document is. And because we're a data slinger, when it comes to reporting, rather than develop our own reports, we push data into whatever's already there. We meet our clients wherever they are. So if that's Power BI or Tableau, we push into that. In the telco case, we were able to push. Now they've got data, they can make their own reports. I think they were using Tableau. So I've just barfed out a lot there.
Right.
But at the end of the day, that's, in about 3 months, that's 3 months in terms of build to realized value. That's, thousands of hours saved, and on the go forward annualized basis, millions of dollars. And that is but one use case. It's a granddaddy use case. You don't have to start that big. We often scare people off. We're like, no, like most automation needs to start with it's some form of allocation of work, or some data that it's got to get somewhere else between disparate sources.
That's right. That's really, it's a cool explanation of like the granddaddy use case. Just for those who are watching, I see people trickling in on Facebook Live. We've got Jason Moyse. He's the director of Autologyx. I just want to make sure if you have questions for him, get those in. Autologyx, in their legal and compliance, which is a vertical that Jason is focused on. They are a single connected digital operations platform for all of your automated workflow and expert decision applications. So, can you tell us a little bit? We have a variety of small solos, mid-size legal operations folks who are in the legal tech community on Facebook. I think of which you're also a member. When you're active on social media, which I know you kind of hover between being active and less active.
Yes.
But who would be the most who's your greatest target audience? It seems there's a focus on legal operations. Are there others who can use your service at the Autologyx service, I should say?
Yeah, I mean, it's a good question. We are focused on legal operations, and that does it does sort of straddle in between law firms and corporate legal departments. Probably that is our preferred target. But we hear from other folks or other potential use cases. As I said, it's basically anywhere where there are a lot of moving parts that need to be connected in a more elegant way, and that's really what it is. So. In this day and age, on the smaller firm side, which is not really a focus for us, we're still talking to potentials in that space in areas like, if you take something like insolvency, which unfortunately, because of the era we're in, it's going to be a growth practice area for folks. Chapter 7 and chapter 11, that's a lot of moving parts. Even if you're, a 7 or 8 person debtor counsel, you're managing a lot of regulatory complexity and a lot of things that need to move along. We've got, potential use cases like that. It's not always going to be, a bank or an AM 100 firm. There is potential for others, but the key indicia always is volume, whether that's volume of matters, volume of documents, volume of data, volume of things that need to be connected or automated together.
Excellent. And tell us about pricing for say your corporate legal operation. How does the pricing work on for Autologic services?
Yeah, it's a great question, because everyone on our management team has been around for quite a while. We're very weary of traditional technology practices when it comes to pricing. This isn't a poke at legal tech, it's a poke, but it's a poke
Hmm.
at technology writ large or enterprise tech generally. So we are very deliberate to not do all of the things that have made us crazy in our careers, on whenever we've been on the buy side. So we don't price by number of users. We don't price by seats. That's just bananas from our perspective. We want all kinds of people to be using it, and if that we don't want an impediment. Um, because a lot of what we do is data model driven. We thought perhaps we would price by way of complexity, and that's really tricky. Um, we offer professional services for folks, but we really try to do that on the front end and then wean them off. So we're just not in the business of selling consulting and professional services. So we do our
Hmm.
best not to do that as well. And some of our key clients have been wise to hire recent STEM grads, and that's who runs everything for them. So ultimately, the way that we price, as I talked about the drag and drop sequencer, which if we were to show one, you could probably see one on the site. It's basically a box and wire diagram, and that's where a lot of uh, the configuring is happening in respect
Hmm.
of data, et cetera, as well as API connections. If you can do that really elegantly, you could perhaps have a process all on one sequence. The more complex whatever it is you're putting together, that may straddle a couple of sequences. So typically what we do on the small end, we charge by the sequence. The more elegantly you engineer it, you think of Wozniak getting from 5 capacitors down to 3, the more elegantly it's engineered. You can keep things on one sequence. So I won't get into numbers. I'm happy to talk to people that, but we price by sequence. We're very accessible. And once folks, at the enterprise level, once they get up to about 10 sequences, we cut it off. We say, we're not going to keep charging you for sequence. You're now enterprise. And we charge baked in one all up, one all in, all up, all in price for
Okay.
enterprise, no matter how many sequences, because we can be foundational at the enterprise level. And on the smaller side, we want those folks too. And maybe their use case is a sequence. And we try to stay approachable.
Accessible that way.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and ROI is really, really apparent. That's the nice thing. That's why I'm happy to be part of the business. It's got a very verifiable ROI.
You
People.
mentioned with with the telecom that they were saving several $1 million a year
Yep,
once they implemented that. That's
yep,
really identifiable. Okay, this is worth it. This value is worth it for us.
yep,
That's excellent.
yep. Very attractive that way.
Yeah, very attractive. I mean, and for a smaller operation, if you're saving 10,000 or $100,000 a month, it's pretty attractive.
Yeah, and those things can happen. The other thing you can do with it is, and again, broader themes writ large for low code and no code. We don't hold ourselves out as a platform that is actually citizen developer, but pretty close or possible. But you could also build a line of business off of it, right? Like it is digital Lego at the end of the day. And if you have subject matter expertise as relates to some regulatory matrix or some form of legislative corpus, and you want to figure a way to productize that knowledge in an offering, it is conceivable to have the foundational tech of your offering to be off of something that's an automation play.
That is that is a fascinating thought as to as how somebody could build something off this for kind of build their own business into it. I kind of like that. Uh, what are some of the things that you'd like to see it used for? That you'd like to see people come on board as kind of that use case that you think would be really cool, but maybe nobody's taken advantage of it yet?
That's a great question, and again, as we see a real cross section of age and stage of folks on where they are on the journey
Hmm.
of building, so ideal for us is they've got a known process in the first instance, right? We
Okay.
hear a lot of platitudes get spoken about, know your process before you go. Well, there's really no choice for something like our platform, because you are building a box and wire diagram at the end of the day. So
Right.
you have to have a fairly good understanding of the process that you're going after. So anywhere where there's a process, we can fit in. But like the really cool use cases, Nick, for us are the ones where there's a managed service, right?
Okay.
Where somebody's got a team of people that review something. Could be a team of paraprofessionals. And they may be onshore or offshore,
Hmm.
right? And it may be that it's work that is high volume but low margin, and needs to be humans in the loop in respect of some review process. That's ideal for us. So that can be, we were looking at airline claims compensation for a while, and it's the pandemic that's maybe put a bit of a stall on that. But as an example, right? So uh,
Right.
uh, us here in North America, we're only just starting to see these compensation schemes for missed flights, as an
Mm.
example. But this is an established regime in the UK, for example, where if you miss a flight and it's the fault of the airline, and just because there's mechanical failure or inclement weather, you may still be entitled to compensation,
Interesting.
as someone whose flight has been delayed or missed. And the thing about that is, in the UK example, the top end of your claim, however, is probably going to be about 600 euros on the top end. So you're not going to hire a lawyer to pursue 600 euros of a claim, and no lawyer's going to likely do a claim for 600 euros. But when you have thousands of those happening at once, and this is what unfolded in the UK as an example, the do-it-yourselfers would try to avail themselves of the regime, and there was like a 70+% fail rate. They weren't able to successfully get their claims honored. Well, a couple of the more clever actually started out in personal injury firms that understood technology and process, got to the point where they started to do this on contingency,
Mm.
with a success rate greater than 90%, doing tens of thousands of claims in a month. Right. And they did all of that. It is just good process automation and the subject matter expertise to know how to navigate that claim. So we love that as a use case. I've been talking about that for a number of years, and now that those regimes are actually in North America, and what's really interesting about it is there's two ways for an Autologyx to look at that. We're keen to build that for the consumer but we're also, now these airlines, as an example, and this is just an example you asked, now
Yep.
they've got tens of thousands of claims they need to process, and they have no idea how to do that. And it's a client retention opportunity. If they do it
Yeah.
well, it's actually a client retention opportunity, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that's one that we internally have been excited about, and have had interesting chats about it. But if you think about it, that's a cool use case, but it's just all the indicia that I talked
Right.
about earlier. Lots of moving parts, data moving around, highly identifiable processes, and still needing someone to be reviewing something from a subject matter expertise.
So a customer coming from you using that similar kind of, let's go down that path a little bit more. Customer coming to you, uh, they should probably have this process in mind and mapped out somewhere before they start building, right? They should have a good idea of what their process is. Maybe they map that out themselves. They set up, they put up the, the tree themselves and know that it goes through this process,
Yeah.
and then come and consult with Autologyx about, okay, now how do we take what you guys have created, your drag and drop uh, platform, and apply it to this map.
That's certainly ideal, but in instances where they don't, it's enough to know where that they're bleeding, right? It's enough to know that they've got a screaming pain point, and that's enough, right? Because it's not always easy to put the process together. That's the type of work I've done in the past. I have a lean Sigma background, and I've done lots of that work and trained folks on it. So, it doesn't have to be, you don't have to overthink it, but you should have
Right.
some idea going in, about where you're trying to get to or what you're trying to do. But it is enough, and usually where we succeed, it's where people show up bleeding.
Have you noticed? Yeah, people show up bleeding. Yeah, please, somebody help us with this problem. uh, have you noticed any particular power users of the service? Are there, besides the legal operations, are there any other kind of identifiable this type of practice or this type of compliance issue? I'm sure, as you mentioned the airlines, I'm thinking credit card companies have got to
Yeah.
have some use for this. But have you noticed any who are like, we've had multiples in this same vertical that are really coming in. They really need this service and they're loving what we're offering.
A couple of different flavors. Even though there are outstanding matter management platforms on the market, a lot of folks still want to have matter management for their idiosyncratic business or practice area, whether that's like nuclear power plant legal claims,
Right.
no one's selling those door to door, right? Like,
Right. There may be three people in the
yeah,
US
like that,
practicing it.
like it could be something like that. It's just like a fictional example, but it's often matter management or claims management of some kind where there's a lot of volume, and that can in turn be investigations and
Mhm.
compliance.
So
You know,
insurance,
yes,
insurance
insurance is,
claims.
we're strong in insurance. One of our key clients is an insurance broker, commercial insurance broker that has like 11 or 12 insurers that they service, which means 11 or 12 different not policies, but policy regimes, with a single broker having to navigate all the claims. Everyone's different. So that's because that's just data.
Hmm.
They can have the same people servicing all of that as long as the data is getting to the right place. So that's an example. So the claims and matter management, and then it is like many other things that we see in legal, a lot of different, like document review of some form, whether it's a lease review or a policy review, or a claims review, anything like that as well, right? And so that sort of, there are aspects of contract lifecycle management in and around that. We don't hold ourselves out as that, but certainly, uh, the example I spoke about earlier with the cell towers, like that is a form of reviewing
Hmm.
leases. And so it's a lot of review work. Anything where, again, one of our hallmarks, one of our things we talk about is anywhere where there's human in the loop
Yeah.
automation happening, which is different than, say, the bots and robotic process automation. Those are trying to remove people out
Remove.
altogether, right?
Right.
And that's a different type of automation.
Yeah, and it seems that often in the legal community, you're gonna have some human in the loop, even as you said, some paraprofessional potentially. It doesn't have to be a lawyer, paralegal, something like that. There's probably something in the loop that makes sense. Like somebody's got to rubber stamp it once it's done, right?
Yeah.
Okay, we've done our check here, and this is good.
Yep. The go, no go.
And so that's kind of an interesting differentiator. Look, if you're looking for that entirely automated system, that's not us. we don't. That's not what we offer.
I would say we're not pure task automation is how
Task.
I would frame. We're
Thank you.
not pure task automation is part of our solution, but we're not pure
Pure.
task automation the way that, the way that a bot is, the way that
Right.
a lot of robotic process automation is. It is pure linear. That is purely linear, and purely task driven. Whereas, we're as a digital operations platform, that's more than just a bunch of buzzwords. Realizing it sounds like a bunch of buzzwords, that really does have some meaning. That means data is processed back in, and something like Autologyx can become the system of record. In some instances, we've displaced the database that we were pulling from, because as we're pulling, we're capturing that data, and now we've got a historical record of all the data, and we became the system of record so that they could retire their existing one. Other use cases that are bigger for us, we're connecting to different data sources.
I was just about to ask you that, because as they're collecting the data, and it's going through your system now, and they're managing their operations through your system, what kind of metrics are on the back end for them? Anything that's broken down, or is that all set up when they set up their wire for their mapping system of their process?
So,
It,
so do you mean metrics in terms of, like, say, the process they're running, or metrics in terms of our technology?
uh, I'm thinking, client, what kind of metrics are they
Yeah.
seeing on their process? Like,
Yes.
are they able to track stuff that, okay, now we know we're saving this much because
Yes.
of that, or is that separate? They have to track that separately from
No, that's part of what they can get as part of the end-to-end solution. And
okay.
as I said, as as really a fabric that's moving data around, pushing data into whatever they've got already in their house. If they're a Tableau user or a Power BI user, they now have access to all this data. In the cell tower example, they have dozens and dozens of, I think, I can't remember if it's Tableau or Power BI, but they're
Hmm.
now able to see, for a singular document, seeing one of those leases that went through, every turn of that document, every time it was processed by somebody, how long they took to process it, any changes that needed to be made at any point in time. And they're able to do that at the document level, at the team level, at the individual reviewer level.
Oh,
So
wow.
that is
Now
like
we can
pure
see
business intelligence.
where are we having bottlenecks
Yeah,
potentially. What?
exactly right.
Yeah.
Exactly right. They thought they had some star performers in that case, when it came to turnaround times, and then now that they've got this transparency and visibility, or they could see,
Yeah.
well, that person is turning them around here, but look at all this rework that's happening on the back end that we weren't able to see before
Right.
because we weren't operating. That's the digital operations. That's what digital transformation means.
Yeah, yeah, that is. And is that easily accessible to any one of the admins for that customer on their dashboard, in AutoLogic's
It,
dashboard, or
it's not an Autologics dashboard, right? Like it's
okay?
their data. It's their data, and it's going into their
Oh, so it
their
is being saved in their Tableau then, maybe in that instance.
it's their Tableau instance.
Gotcha.
It's their Power BI instance. And once I've seen this in a few instances, and I'm sure it's where everyone would go eventually. You get addicted to it. I know when I worked I've worked in some customer experience roles, which is a lot of data, and executives in particular, they just salivate. They just want more and more and more, especially when it's presented so well, like the very powerful report outs you can get in Tableau, Power BI, Airtable,
Hmm.
whatever it is you like. So, like, some of our single customers will have dozens and dozens of reports that they're now using because it's just so powerful in terms of business intelligence, right?
Right, right. That's interesting. Yeah. So, see, I was picturing it in as a part of their AutoLogic's dashboard, but I was that was
Well,
a rough assumption there.
it's germane that you raise that, right? Because that's the shift that's happening. You don't, the same way you don't buy software out of a box anymore.
Right.
Like, it's tough. It's a little tough from a selling perspective because not everyone has made the shift. But what is a platform? Well, a platform is like completely malleable. It's mostly about the data model, so that the end user, yes, we're design centric. When anything we put in front of a client has to have very clean UI UX,
Right.
whether that is a legal request dashboard or a work queue or a fillable form that they're using. But it's really, those are just front ends that are relatively configurable, right?
Yeah.
Not
They're
just on branding, not just on
right.
branding, but what's there. Everybody's experience with Autologyx should be different by design, right?
Right.
So,
Right. That's interesting. Well, we're about 40 minutes in. I know it's later on your end of the world, so I don't want to keep you all night, Jason. What haven't we discussed that you think needs to be discussed for replay viewers, podcast listeners? What do they need to know about Autologics that we have not covered?
well, I would say this, that thankfully the rise of legal ops is here. It took a while, but it's here. And the main takeaway, I would say, if you're in a legal ops role, if you're in a compliance role, if you're in an innovation role, stop the madness in respect of trying to buy so much kit. Look for those solutions. This isn't just for Autologics. Look for those solutions that wire all of your existing tech stack together. And that really is a big part of the strength of Autologics, is the way that we, if you're a Contract Express user, we wire in. If you're not, we've got document assembly baked in. It's if you've got the tools in place and you need them to be working together for a broader workflow, that's the power of Autologics, I would say.
Excellent. Excellent. And how do people find you and connect with you?
Not too hard. If you want to get a hold of me, it's just jason.moyse at autologyx.com. And I would love to hear from you. You could, if sales at autologyx.com as well. We'd love to hear from you. And then of course you could get to us on our site. The one thing I'll mention is the company really grew up on the European side, and we're really looking to build out our North American footprint. We have North American clients, of course, but we're really looking forward to building out our North American presence, which is why, Nick, I want to thank you for this opportunity, because it's these communities of like-minded folks. Everything's a tribe now, especially we're not getting together in person anytime soon, regrettably. And so getting around the like-minded folks is really, really important. So if folks have those communities, I'm only too happy to be part of them. And thank you, Nick, again for this opportunity.
Oh, my pleasure. Thank you. And thank you for reaching out and for being patient with me while I took the break. Autologics is the website. That is AUTOLOGYX.com. And that's Jason Moyse is our guest tonight. Jason, thank you for being a guest. Don't disappear after we stop recording, and I'll tell you some of the follow up for after the show.
Beauty. Thanks, Nick.
Thank you, everybody. Talk to you soon.